Hi everyone and welcome back to part 2 of my how to create a Fakemon tutorial. I hope you enjoyed part 1 where I explained how to come up with the Fakemon concept and how you can do too. Please watch it before this one because in my opinion everything stands and falls with a solid idea and concept. Quick disclaimer, in this part I will show you how I design and render my Fakemon in Procreate. This style is trying to imitate the Sugimori style, but I'm not 100% there yet. It's also not a general drawing tutorial, so you should know the basics of where to put shading and the basic terms like what a layer or brush is. With that being said, let's start with the tutorial. I'm using an Apple iPad with an Apple Pen and a drawing glove. The program I'm using is Procreate, which is only available for iPads I believe, but there are a lot of free drawing programs that you can use. For example, I used Krita for a long time and it's amazing. Nothing is sponsored though. So now that we've done the research and created a concept, let's start with the drawing process. For this tutorial I'm drawing an evolution of one of my Fakemon from the Smorgas series, Kaiju. The prompt was Kaiju and I created a little sad Kaiju that cries a lot, so I named it Kaiju. It originally was a dragon fairy type, but I'm changing it to dragon water now. This time I used a 3000x3000 pixel canvas because I wanted a lot of space to sketch. The larger the canvas, the larger the brush size you need. At first create a few sketches to try out different poses, silhouettes and how different elements look together. Make sure all elements you add serve a purpose and are fitting the typing. Eyes and poses can drastically change the personality of your Fakemon. Make sure they are fitting. I recommend using reference photos from the start. Drawing a believable and accurate pose straight from the head is difficult, especially for beginners. It can also help when you experience some sort of art block. When you are done, look at your sketches and find out which parts you like and which you don't. I, for example, like the more round bean-shaped bodies from sketch 3 and 5, the arms of sketch 1, the T-Rex aesthetic from sketch 4, and the watery tail from sketch 4. I do not like the spikes on 1, 2 and 3 and the pose in general. With that knowledge I made a new sketch. The pose should be conveying what kind of personality the Fakemon has. If it is very happy and agile, try moving or jumping pose. If it likes to hide, maybe look at references that show animals hiding, and so on. I decided a sitting pose will convey the mood of this Fakemon the best. It is supposed to be sad and unmotivated. Its head and tail are hanging as well as its arms. If you look at Pokémon designs you will notice a good balance between patterns and empty space. Too many patterns can be distracting, however too much open space does the same thing. I implemented a tear shape both in its tail and belly pattern. Its toe beans are shaped like a sad emoji. And the back spikes are an element from its pre-evolution, and that's basically the design. Pokémon usually have a strong silhouette. By that I mean even if you just see the silhouette of the Pokémon or Fakemon, you know which Pokémon it is, or at least what you can expect from the design. This is something I honestly struggle with because I often like to place the head of the Fakemon in front of its body, so the silhouette has no head, but that's usually what you are looking for. However, I try to work on that issue. When we are happy with our sketch, we can lower the opacity of the sketch layer and create a new layer above the sketch layer and start with the outlines. There are two different brushes I like to use. On larger canvases like my 3000x3000 one, I used the basic script brush with a size of 7. In most of my YouTube videos I work on a canvas with the size 1920x1080 pixels, which is a lot smaller than the standard YouTube screen format. In this case I use an edited version of the script brush with the size 5 to 7 and with jitter being at 27 instead of 0. It makes the line a bit more rough and inky looking, but to me doesn't look as good when I use it on a larger canvas. This is just how the terms are in Procreate, I don't know how it's called in other programs. You may have to look that up on yourself. Now outline everything. Try to make long brush strokes when possible, instead of putting together multiple lines to create one. It looks more smooth that way. Usually the outlines are black, however sometimes they are colored differently. For example, when there's ice, fire, electricity or ghostly energy in the design. There you can use a lighter or darker tone of the skin tone. It gives the design a certain wow factor. When you're having difficulties to pull a certain line and it looks wobbly, you can flip your canvas. Some lines are harder to draw when you're right or left-handed. If your lines are wobbly in general, check out if you can put on a stabilizer. It helps to create a steady line. The next step can be time consuming, especially when using larger canvases. As you can see, the outlines are very thick, so I like to use an eraser and slim them down. And it's perfectly fine that the outlines don't have the same exact thickness throughout. That's exactly what I'm going for. If you look closely at Pokemon outlines, they look like they were drawn with an ink pen. Sometimes fuzzy on the outside, sometimes slimmer, sometimes thicker. There are differences between the generations, so if you like a certain art style, just study it and figure out what exactly you like about it. If you like the art style of a certain Fakemon YouTuber, you can also study how they draw or search if they have a tutorial on their own. If your outlines are finished, create a new layer underneath your outline layer. This will be the layer for the first color. In total, you can use up to 3 or 4 colors. This does not include black, white and gray because those are shades, not colors. The colors are influenced by what typing you gave your Fakemon. Usually every type has an overall color palette. How loose or strict you are is up to you. However, if you use a completely unrelated color to the typing, people might have trouble identifying it. The colors shouldn't be too gray because it makes the design muddy and drains the colors, unless that is exactly the concept you're going for. Also, Pokemon designs don't use neon colors. When I look at my color square, the tones are usually in the middle. You can also directly color pick from already existing Pokemon, but make sure not to directly copy a color palette, because people always associate the colors with the Pokemon first and not your fake one. Again, unless that's exactly what you're going for. I always put every color on a separate layer, because if I realize I don't like one of the colors I picked, I can lock the canvas and just paint over it with a different color, without having to worry to draw over the other colors. It's also easier to create a shiny version of your Fakemon, but I will talk about that one later. If my colors are finished, I put all the color layers in one folder and copy it. This is a backup and will be used for the shiny later. Now merge all the layers together, and we can start the next step. Create a new layer above your now merged color layers and set the layer opacity to around 30%. This can be changed later if you feel like the shading should be darker or lighter. Then clip the new layer to the color layer below. If you draw on this clipped layer, you will see that you can only draw in the same space as the color layer. This makes it easy to not color outside the lines. Also make sure you know where your light source is coming from. Now fill in the spaces where the shading should be. So basically the areas where no or little light is hitting your Fakemon. Later we will use an eraser to erase some parts, so make sure that if you put shadows somewhere there is enough of it, because if it's just a few pixels they won't be seen later. I use pure black for it, but parts of that will be changed later. But it's easier to start like that. By drawing the shadow like that, you are basically creating a gray overlay, which means your colors gain a little grayness. If you drew all the shading, we start to erase parts of it. For this I am using one of the airbrushes, where I also put the jitter to 27 and the opacity of the brush to around 30 plus minus a bit. The most important point is that the brush should be transparent. The size again is linked to your canvas size. I usually use a size 5 to a maximum 15. Now I erase the edge by going over it with my eraser. Since the brush opacity is not at 100%, it's not erasing all of the shading. I go over it until there is a nice transition with no hard edges. This is a bit different from the official Sugimori art style, since there they often only make one transition between the base color and the shading. So I would only go over the edge once with my transparent eraser. If you're done, look at your whole piece, if the shading is too dark or if you like it in general. If you think the colors look too muddy, now lock the shading layer so you can only draw on it. Now you see my base color is green, so I think using a dark green as the shading color instead of black will look better. So since the layer is locked, I can just recolor the parts of the shading that are above the green parts. Be careful to not draw over your other colors, because if you, example, accidentally draw on the shading of your red color field, it will be clearly visible. For a red color field you need dark red, for blue dark blue, and so on. I find using black shading and recoloring it if needed a lot more easy and time saving, because sometimes the black shading is nice looking so I don't have to change anything. I hope you understand what I mean. Now comes the lighting. Create a new layer above your shading layer and also clip it to your color layer. When doing this in Procreate, it automatically clips the layer to the first layer underneath. That is not a clipping layer itself. Now put on your lighting. It's a bit different from the shading because you're not using white this time. You already picked the lighting color. So basically just use the color in which you're putting your lighting on, but a lot lighter. Now you again use the same transparent eraser and erase the edges of your lighting until you're happy. It's okay if it looks a bit messy. If you zoom in on the lighting of Pokemon, it often looks wild, which is troubling for me because I'm a bit scared of that messiness. I used to always draw rather clean and it makes me go outside of my comfort zone. But if I only stay in that comfort zone, I won't learn anything. When I'm done with the general lighting, I shade the eye, a dark color at the top and a light color at the bottom. This is an important step that shouldn't be missed. This step is completely optional, but sometimes Pokemon designs have textures on certain parts. You can create these by either downloading images of, for example, rocks, sand, water or other stuff you might be fitting, or by using texture brushes in your drawing programs. Put it above your color layer, clip it to the color layer, turn down the opacity, maybe change the color around if it looks off and erase it everywhere it shouldn't be, for example the eyes. I used some random texture brush to create a texture of the skin of the Fakemon. I only wanted a texture on the green part, so I erased it everywhere else. And to finish off the design, add highlights in the eye. I used a paintbrush for that, and because this Fakemon is really sad and everything, I added a second highlight, so the eye looks extra shiny. So here it is, the finished design, Sobzilla, the evolution of Crychu. However, there's one more thing that has to be done, the shiny. If you're making a whole region, a YouTube series like I do, or even a fan game, you may want to create a shiny version of your Fakemon. For this, take the copy of your color folder. You can now change the color of every layer. What strategy you use is up to you. You can just switch around colors until you like it, or make it more similar to your real-life inspiration. Maybe the animal you based your Fakemon on has different color variations and you want to base your shiny on that. Go crazy with it and have fun. After I finish a Fakemon design, I come up with the name and DAX entry. However, these topics were covered in part 1, because they are not drawing related. If you're making a game, you also need stats for your Fakemon, but that's something I don't do, so I can't help you with that. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and find it helpful. I've never done something like this before, so please excuse me if there is anything unclear. You can leave your questions in the comments if there is anything you didn't understand. I try to help if possible. If it is related to your drawing program, I can only help on a really basic level because I only ever use Procreate and have used Krita and Clip Studio Paint. With these tutorials you can hopefully kinda recreate the style I'm using in my main series called the German-speaking region. It is based on Germany and my long-term project right now. There you can see how I use this technique as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, or if you have questions about, I don't know, your Fakemon concepts or something, just let me know. I try to answer everything. Maybe if I update my style one day I will make a new tutorial, so if you're interested in that, please subscribe to the channel, it helps me a lot. Anyways, I hope you learned something and see you in the comments.